Hello and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast. I am Cindy Ingram, your host and the founder of Art Class Curator and the Curated Connections Library. We're here to talk about teaching art with purpose and inspiration, from the daily delights of creativity to the messy mishaps that come with being a teacher. Whether you're driving home from school or cleaning up your classroom for the 15th time today, take a second, take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Art Class Curator podcast. Today, I have another older episode for you. So if you have not listened to this oldie but goodie, I am bringing you a republish of one of my favorite conversations that I have had, one of my favorite interviews that I have had, and I feel like it is very highly relevant to what is going on in the world today. We are in a incredible period of stress and trauma. This school year, I've really noticed that the excitement and energy that comes along with teaching, like that didn't seem to happen at the beginning of this school year. Teachers are so burnt out. And I think that those teachers out there who are especially struggling with things like anxiety and sensitivities now is harder than ever. So this episode was episode number 19, and I interviewed two teachers, Amber Jordan and Monica Wright, and we talked about how we handle teaching when we have anxiety and also being highly sensitive people. So I am happy to bring this episode back from the vault for you to listen to today. Hopefully you get some great nuggets of tips and at the very least help you feel like you're a little bit less alone in the struggles that you're dealing with. So thank you so much for listening. And here is my interview with Amber Jordan and Monica Wright. There's a common misconception that teachers are all extroverted, attention-loving people, but there are actually a lot of introverts at the head of classrooms. Today on the podcast, Amber Jordan, Monica Wright, and I open up about the struggles of teaching art when you're a highly sensitive introvert. We talk about the impact of sensory overload and anxiety on our teaching, and share our own strategies for coping with the classroom chaos. This is Cindy Ingram, and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast, where we're taking art out of the dark with thoughtful explorations and in-depth interviews designed to ignite curiosity and delight in art classrooms everywhere. Welcome, Monica and Amber, to the Art Class Curator podcast.
Thank you.
So what I want to do first is have you introduce yourselves, tell us what role you're in art education, and then we'll get into our topic at hand. So Monica, why don't you start and introduce yourself?
My name is Monica Wright. I teach in Central Illinois. This is my 21st year of teaching. I've taught 12 years of high school, 8 years of middle school, and this is my 18th year of elementary.
Wow. So you have all the different grade levels. So I think that'll be great to talk about with this conversation. Okay, Amber, what about you?
All right. So my background's a little bit different. I have a corporate America background. I actually was in the world of design for several years before I came into teaching. So now I'm on my third year of teaching at Founders Classical Academy of Flower Mound, and I have grades 2 through 7.
And what's fun is that Amber teaches for the same district that I used to teach for. I was at a Founders school as well, and it just so happened that we met that way. Well, I met through my website and then found that out later. So how we came together today is on Facebook, and I chose the middle school art teachers Facebook group because I think middle school is the most chaotic and emotionally draining of all the grades. And I said, hey, is anybody an introvert who is also highly sensitive, who also has anxiety that wants to be on a podcast? And surprisingly, so many people came forward to talk about this. So many people were like, yes, post a link when you're ready because I want to hear it. I don't want to be on it, but I want to listen. So I'm so excited that you guys agreed to do this because I think there's a lot of us out there. So, and this is going to be an interview, but I'm going to be interviewing myself as well because these things also fit me. So we're going to each kind of talk about our experience with that. And then we're going to go through sort of different topics of how to handle being a highly sensitive introvert with anxiety. Okay, so tell us about your anxiety journey.
I suffer social anxiety. I do not like having eyes on me. And I noticed when I was teaching high school, I was much more nervous than when I taught middle school. My first year of teaching, I was K through 12. And I noticed that when I had the little kids in there, elementary, I was in the zone. I was a totally different person. And somebody came in once and it was like, it's like watching theater. You sing, you dance, you're so excited, you're always happy. And I thought, why am I not that way with the older kids? And I'm not. I was conscious of everything I said, how they were taking it. So I knew right away that my element was with the younger kids. But I also noticed that my interactions with adults caused a lot of anxiety. Open house, parent-teacher conferences, evaluations. I hated presenting in front of teachers. So I knew right away that there was an issue and I needed to find coping skills. And when I saw you address this on Facebook, I was so excited because we don't talk about this enough. This is something we need to talk about.
No, we don't. I mean, it's seen as weakness, and so we don't talk about it. But I even tell my students, like, if I have a student comes not during their class or they get too close to me, I mean, I tell them, I say, you know what? You're making me uncomfortable. I don't like when people stand close to me. I don't like when people touch me. I don't like, and I need my planning time away from you. So, and it's not a thing against you, but, I think we have to be open about this stuff because it's not weakness. It's just, I don't know, life.
It's who we are.
Yeah. And it's teaching. And then when we're open about it, we're teaching our students who are like us that they don't have to hide that part of themselves. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's great that we're talking about this today. Let's move into Amber and you can tell us your journey.
Well, I'm a little bit different. I am an introvert, but I can act as an extrovert. I am a very good actress. On the outside, people meeting me would have no idea that I'm actually a very, very sensitive person, a highly sensitive person, extreme introvert, but I hide it really well. And so it's a little bit different for me where the majority of people that meet me have no idea that I'm actually a true introvert to the point where I have a lot of anxiety, but I am very good at just kind of masking it and covering it. And so I have some coping mechanisms that have helped me. But when someone first meets me, they're like, oh, there's no way you're an introvert. I'm like, yes, I am. I really, really am. I promise. It's like, you're making me nervous. You need to just take a few steps back. But I can fake it. I can fake being an extrovert, but it's all in training where I'm very much truly on the inside. I process as an introvert, everything about me, my makeup, all that. I have to do all the steps that a typical introvert would. I just don't necessarily present myself in the world that way.
Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think introvert was a thing when I was a child. Like people didn't talk about that. So I always felt probably for 20 years of my life that I was broken. I felt like there was something wrong with me. And then it started to come out. I never studied the history of like what an introvert is, but it used to be associated with shyness and it used to be associated with anxiety, but really it's just associated with, it's about how you process your energy. And if you spend a day with people, at the end of the day, are you just completely and utterly drained? And that's kind of where introverts come from. My mom still thinks introvert is like an insult. And I'm like, no, it's just how you are. So with my journey with this is I used to have very bad social anxiety for the longest time. And I would, even in college, the only class I ever failed was an Italian class because with an art history degree, you have to have foreign language and you have to talk in Italian. So I would be walking on my way to Italian class and I would turn around and walk away and I would just not go to class because I was so terrified Italian class and I had no friends because I was so it was really bad. Once I labeled it and I identified it, I've gotten a lot better. And as I've aged too, I think you just get more comfortable. But yeah, I used to suffer highly from social anxiety. Now I just have general anxiety, which is nicely controlled with medicine. So, but the teaching environment is very stressful. And another thing I mentioned is when you hear the term, this is for the listeners, a highly sensitive person, that is not someone who just cries a lot. It's someone who is overly impacted by sensory input. So loud noises, touch, smells, lights.
Noise in general, clanging water bottles.
Oh gosh, flipping water bottles.
The metal ones that hit the ground, they hit the tile floor, and then they cling for 5 minutes afterwards.
Yeah. I am honestly getting goosebumps just thinking about that sound. So if you think you might be a highly sensitive person and you've never heard about this, there actually is a test you can take online. And it's like 25 questions and you can go through them. And if you're like me, you scored like 24 out of 25, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is me. So, and we chose to be teachers, which is the most sensory inputting of things. So we're going to talk about how to deal with that. So let's talk about, I guess, the noise level in a classroom. So what sort of ideas do you have for that, Amber? How do you deal with that?
That is my probably number one classroom management tool that I actually use. So my classroom, I use the noise level where I have 0, which is silent Mona Lisa. I have 1, which is spy talk. You go above a spy talk, you're too loud. 2 is low flow. 3 would be formal normal. And then above that, I don't even really talk about it. So 5 would basically be out of control. My classroom has lost its mind. So I'm really big on my noise levels. Typically, I have my kids start out. I do 0 silent for the first 10 minutes of class because I love just having them get into that creative time. Usually after 10 minutes, they kind of forget that I put them on 0. After that 10 minutes, I say, okay, well, you know what? You're doing really great. Let's spy talk. And most of them don't even know. They forget because they're so involved in the process. So for me, noise levels kind of saves my life. That is my number one tool that I use. And spy talk, and sometimes it'll get a little bit crazy and a little bit loud. And I'm like, oh, like we're up here at 2. And of course today with my 3rd graders, it's like, oh, we're out of control. They knew immediately what I meant. And they took it back down. They're like, oh, okay, we're so sorry, Miss Jordan. And they took it back down to that spy talk. And so for me, it helps me, 1, control the classroom for management, but 2, it keeps my sanity because I don't like a really loud, noisy classroom. I know some people feel like, oh, that means they're being productive. The louder they are, the better it is. And then for me, a quiet, calm classroom means that they're in their own world. They're thinking about their projects. They're creating. And it's not just about having control. It's about letting them have that space to create. And that silence it creates that space for them just to be in the zone and where they need to be.
I love that you started them out at silent because, I would have them talk at first and then anything after that would be sort of viewed as a punishment. You're talking and then you're going to silent. But if you start them out as silent, then it sort of builds that, okay, you're earning the right to go to. I love the spy talk too. That's just makes it. The little kids probably like that. Yeah. I guess even the middle schoolers would like that too.
Okay, yeah, even the middle schooler, they get it. Yeah. Ninjas are big with the middle schoolers right now.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. And I think, not modeling yourself off of what you think what other people might say. So you mentioned, people thinking, oh, if it's not loud, they're not like being active in the process and they're not, but really it's about you and your environment. Right. So I know that for me, I keep a very controlled environment because I can't handle chaos very well. So it's, even getting up out of your seat, you have to get permission first. And only one person is allowed to be out of their seat at a time because if 2 people are out, the singer is going to lose their mind. So it's all about creating an environment that works for you so you can make it through the day. But I also love what you said about giving them that space because if they're talking the whole time, they're not thinking about their work. So I love that too.
I'm pretty lucky. The way my classroom is set up, I have wonderful natural light. So with that natural light, I actually leave the classroom lights off the majority of the time. And part of that is for my sanity, because when light is sensory, so I get sensory overload if there's just the bright fluorescent lights are on, I get a headache, it makes me in a bad mood, it makes me feel anxious. But I notice when I turn off my lights, it sets the mood for my classroom. I usually have kind of some soft music playing in the background. So when they enter my classroom, they instantly know this is a change. This is something different from the hallway. This is something different from PE class. It's a signal to them to change their behavior, kind of quiet down, calm down. And it's just a nice flow for what I do. And we have enough light where I'm not too worried about their eyesight, but they've gotten in the habit where, especially if they know oh, okay, Miss Jordan's lights are off, it means something really important today. They've learned to kind of listen more when I have the lights down. And usually it means I'm going to put something up on the projector that they're interested in. And I'm really strict on the routine of when they come in. You come in and you go, I say show-mo. So show-mo means show me Mona Lisa. So show me that quiet sitting Mona Lisa. And so especially with the younger grades, I'm really strict on them of come in, sit down, your hands are folded, your eyes are on me, your mouth is quiet and you're calm. And when I set that calm at the beginning of class, it makes me so much easier for me to just set the pace of my class. I'm like, all right, here we go. You're already quiet. I don't have to tell you to be quiet because you know how it should be when you come into my classroom. And so I think just setting that pace of that expectation of, you know what, this is a calm place and this is a quiet place. For me, being the personality that I am, it keeps me calm and it helps me teach. And then too, it just helps me get the class started in a fast pace. I don't like to yell and I don't like having to quiet down the rowdiness of a class. So anything that I can do that can just set that calm from the beginning is the best for my sanity. I would like to say it's the best for my class. Yes, it's the best for my class. Oh, it's for the kids. But it truly is for my own sanity and my own well-being. We're just going to keep it calm and the lights are down and we come in quiet.
Well, and I like that too. I think teachers, and maybe it's women, I don't know. We're taught to, think of other people before ourselves. And if you're struggling in this way, you need to put the airbag on yourself first. So I think, all of these things. And I used to just during my planning period, I would turn off all the lights and I would lock the door, because I was like, I can't handle this. And sometimes I would lay down on the tables and I would just sort of lay there and I would put on white noise and on the speaker. And I wasn't working, but if I didn't do that, then for the next class period, I wouldn't be as good of a teacher. So you have to kind of notice when you're about to lose it and preventing the losing it, which I think is what this noise level and structure. So how do you teach students to do that? What to do the Shomo? Do you have any good classroom management tips on?
Well, so at the beginning of the year, I actually had some guinea pigs. So all the teachers' kids had to come in and we did a demo video of all my classroom procedures. So I did a video from how do we treat our glue sticks to how do we put an eraser away and where are all the supplies. But I included the Shomo and how they walk in the hallways. And I did a funny little video of hallway horror and added all these crazy effects to it. But I was teaching them. So from day one, every single class, I was very big on, okay, we're just going to practice this procedure. And when you come into my classroom, use Shobo. When we leave the classroom, your chairs are tucked in, your hands are behind your back, your eyes are on me. So it's all part of that first year procedure. And now I just say, Shomo, I can whisper, Shomo. And the entire class is oh, okay, hands on our desk and their eyes are on me. And I'm oh, that was too loud. Can we do it quieter? And our mascot's the owl. So it's okay, owls don't make any noise when their wings flap. So let's be an owl. How quiet can we do Shomo? And so then it's a challenge to them. I'm oh, okay. I'm Shomo. And then I add in some crazy. I'm okay, show me Medusa. So hands up here, crazy Medusa. I'm okay, we're explorers. And we explore. And then it's we do Aphrodite. Oh! And then so we add that. And I go, oh, okay, now Shomo. And I can whisper it. And so the class has it to the point where they just know the routine. And I do it often in between, as I'm teaching or as they're working. Sometimes I just go, Shomo. Just for fun. And they know to stop what they're doing. They put their utensils down and their eyes are on me. And that's especially good if I'm trying to teach another point. Instead of saying, oh, class, be quiet. Let me get your attention. I just say, Shomo. And they all drop what they're doing. Their eyes are on me. And then I can give a point and then let them go on with their work. And so for me, it's just part of the routine from day one. Just teaching them that routine and what the expectation is. And it's a sanity saver for me. And the videos were huge at the beginning of the year because then I saved my voice. I didn't have to teach the same thing for grades 2 through 7 of, okay, this is the expectation. I just put on my silly little video. The kids laughed. We had a good time. But I got my point across of what my expectations were in a fun way. It wasn't, this is the first day of school and these are my rules. And it wasn't any of that. It was just a nice way for them to connect and get that. And it worked all year long. Even to this day, they understand.
And I love that. In those videos too, you can always come back to them.
I have them saved.
Yeah. I mean, I see this a lot now on the internet of people who teach, especially elementary teachers, making videos of the intros to projects and demos and rules. And I was oh, I wish I would have thought of that when I was teaching elementary, because especially when you have to say the same, I had 6 classes of each grade level. So it was 36 classes. So I'd have to say the same thing 36 times. So just making a quick video, I think, and making it fun, I think that's awesome. Okay, so Amber and I were talking about noise level. So she was giving, I don't know if you heard any of it, but she was talking about how she uses Shomo, which is Mona Lisa, to create to deal with her noise level. So would you want to share what you do with keeping a good noise level in your classroom?
Okay, keeping in mind that I'm talking of my younger kids, if they come in with bubbles in their mouth, we get to pop the bubbles and make a really big deal out of it. And if they're working very quietly, they get stories from me, stories from my childhood. And if they had to choose between watching a video at the end of class because they were super good, like a 3-minute scratch garden video, or listening to music while they're working, or me telling a story, they will choose a story every single time. They would rather me tell stories the whole class than do anything else. So I talk a lot during class. And if I'm talking, they're listening. And it's a quiet zone. And if I tell them, okay, I'm done, you're working. If you stay at a level 0 to 1, then we're fine. And then partner talk is fine. The minute we get louder than partner talk, you did not earn a story at the end of the class. And they will do anything possible to earn that story. So I have some crazy stories from childhood. So matter of fact, parents are like, is this true? Do you make these up? These couldn't possibly have happened to you. I'm like, oh no, these are all real stories. And so that helps a lot. Also, establishing procedures. We talked about how to protect, like Mona Lisa. I also do that. I've got my Mona Lisa in the corner that I point to, and how to sit and how our arms should be and how we should be quiet. They know all my supplies are pets. I put little googly eyes on all my pets. And I'm like, if you hurt, would you go home and stab your cat with a pencil? You do not stab my eraser. It's my pet. And so, believe it or not, I have the same supplies from the beginning of the year. They are almost in perfect condition. My kids take this so seriously. Now,
Such a good tip.
Middle school, not so much, but middle school, when they disrespected my supplies, I literally assigned them a number, gave them each a baggie with 8 broken crayons. That's all they got until they showed me they could respect my supplies. And after that, I had no problems in middle school. So it works for all grades.
I'm going to go and draw cat ears on all my erasers first thing in the morning. Don't hurt the kitty.
Exactly.
So good. That is genius. Googly eyes on everything. Oh my gosh. I would do it on the tables too, because I'm like, don't hit the tables.
It's true. I do. Everything. Yes, it works. It works.
That is awesome.
And it keeps the noise level down because I cannot stand when they hit the tables. So I'm like, you are hitting my pet. And they're like, then they'll pet it. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, thank you.
I love that. That is so good. And well, I love your story idea too, because you're finding something that they enjoy. You're finding a reward. It's not some sort of like fake reward where they get candy or something. They're getting something they genuinely like and enjoy. They're getting a closer connection with you by hearing your stories and hearing you talk. And it's just building that classroom relationship of fun and connection. And that's really cool. And now I want to hear one of your stories, but maybe at the end.
I could tell you one. It'll get you. Yeah, it's crazy. It's okay. Sure. Why not? At the end.
That's awesome. So yeah, noise level is one. I do this noise level too, like 0, 1, and 2. And I'm not as good at enforcing it. It sounds like as you guys are, but I do. And I think that this came from Anna Nichols at the blog Managing the Art Classroom. I don't know if you write the word art on the board. And if it gets kind of loud, you erase the A. That's a warning. And then you erase the R, continues to get loud. And then they lose like 5 minutes of talking. And then if they erase the T, then you lose the entire class period of talking. And that works really well for middle school because they just love to talk so much. They don't want to lose that privilege. But in general, I try to like make sure that it's nice and quiet because my A or what I would erase an A for would probably be a lot quieter than what another teacher would erase the A for. But I just got to keep it low. Okay. So what about those students who are always up in your face? What do you do about those guys?
Do you want to start, Amber? And then I got quite a bit. So go ahead, Amber.
Well, okay. So I kind of have a funny little thing that I do in my classroom. I have red masking tape on the floor. So I have my podium up at the front. I have my little rug. My rug is my zone. And I put red tape on the floor by my whiteboard. So my podium is up front and my whiteboard, and students are not allowed to cross the red line. And that way, there's two things. Well, one is a safety issue. I don't want them. I have, my projectors up there, my TV is up there, and I just don't want them near my whiteboard. And two is, honestly, it's just my personal space. And so I've taught them from day one to just kind of not go past the red line or the rug. They can't get onto the rug space. They can talk to me kind of behind the podium. We're at a comfortable distance, but I just don't want them wandering around the room and just magically popping up in front of me. And I am a big on, you have to stay in your seat, raise your hand, and wait until I call on you. If I don't like the wandering around the room and just random children popping up and showing up, either at my podium or at my desk or just appearing next to me.
Oh, I hate when they do that.
That genie poof. I'm like, oh no, we're not doing that. And they know. And if they come up to me and they try that, I say, oh, nope, go back to your seat. And they know to just go back and raise their hand and try it again. And then when they raise their hand, I'm like, okay, and then I'll come over to them and talk to them in a, one-on-one conversation. I just don't like the little genies popping around and following me around the room. One is my space issue. Can you see my face is turning red? Can you see the hives? One is my personal space. I don't deal well with having that surprise of having a student suddenly next to me. And two is I just don't think I don't want to say proper. That sounds so classical, formal. I just don't think it's polite for a child to just come up and kind of interrupt what you're doing and your flow. It's good training for them to just raise their hand and wait to be called on and for the teacher to come over to them and have a conversation with them.
Yeah. I have two comments. One of them is she was talking about how she was getting red. And it really is like this, if you don't know how this feels, it really is like a physical reaction. And several times when both of you have talked about different things, like my skin starts to crawl and like it literally just hearing about it. And her face is red. We're on video. You can't see it, but her face is red right now. Mine, I get goosebumps and I get chilled. And like, it's like the hair stands up at the back of your neck. Like that is how I feel like if I were to start talking about like screeching noises or styrofoam or like, different things, like I would have physical reactions to them. So it's not like, this is not just sort of a thing that's in our heads. It's like a bodily reaction. So I want to point that out.
All right. I'll jump in then. I'm going to address a couple things. First of all, I'm going to say that my face gets red and you can tell how stressed I am based on how red my face is. If I just get flushed, I'm relatively okay, but I'm definitely out of my comfort zone. If I get big, blotchy red marks that go all the way up my face, I am stressed to the max. So how I deal with it is I always keep a turtleneck in the back of my room. If I know I'm going to have to meet with a parent, if I know I'm going to have to meet with the principal, I change into a turtleneck. It won't cover all the red, but it calms me knowing that it's covering most of it. And because I live in a climate where it can be very cold or very hot, I also have a sleeveless turtleneck. So I always have that turtleneck. And then I also get dry mouth when I'm nervous. So I'll keep the BioMouth dry gel, the spray or the gel, and I'll keep that in my desk for dry mouth when I get nervous. And I also keep an extra strength fan under my desk. So when I'm really red, the kids will be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just, a little hot. I'm cooling down. But it's my way of, I take that time to do my breathing techniques and to calm down because people don't realize people like us hold our stress in our shoulders so much. We walk around with our stress in our body all the time. So my turning red is just an external that people can see, but I'm keeping it in my body all the time and I feel that stress. So I do relaxation, meditation. I do the 3 slow breaths in, hold it for 3 seconds, then slowly out for 3. And I now have my kids doing that. When my kids that get stressed out, they love that. And I have an emoji pillow that it's tactile and it'll go from a sad face to a happy face or from an angry face to, I think it's sad to happy and angry to happy. It's a tactile one. And just feeling it calms them down. And I know what they're going through. So to have that for them has been a huge benefit for me. But as far as personal space, I have a table and a desk that I've made into an L, and you cannot get past me when I'm sitting there. But at the end, I have a seat, and it's an I need you now chair. If a child goes and sits in that seat, they're telling me, I need you right now. I need you, come see me. And I know to stop everything and find out what's going on. But I keep all my supplies at the table so my kids aren't up and walking around. They have no need to be. I taught at an inner city school. And when we talk about in your face, I'm also going to address that child that is literally in your face. The children that are cussing you out, the children that are throwing chairs at your head. I've had that. And so I have a couple different strategies that go, this is a little off tangent because it goes into classroom management, but I'm going to say that the biggest cause of anxiety for new teachers is proficiency, planning, performance, their student makeup, their self-confidence, their communication, their expectations. So I say you prep, you adapt, you reflect, but overall you be positive. So I will take my hardcore student and I will find them during my lunch, my prep, before school, after school, during their PE, and I'll do what's called a same side chat. We talk for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, but they're not allowed to talk about school. So they have to talk to me about anything they want as long as it doesn't relate to school. So we get to know each other. So the next time they see me in the room, they know I took the time to come find out about their life, and it really helps. So it's not just the kids wandering around because you have that in middle school all the time. It's those kids that you feel like you cannot reach. So I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but I use Kagan structures. Dr. Spencer Kagan, I love him. I do team building. I do class building in middle school. We do silly sports. We do goofy games. And the first 2 weeks are just getting to know each other and getting along. Because if your class isn't like each other, you are not going to accomplish anything that year. And you are going to be so stressed, and your anxiety is going to, I mean, when I moved to middle school, especially my inner city middle school, I used to always love school. I cried the first 2 weeks. I had never cried in 20 years. I wasn't, how am I ever going to reach these kids is what I thought. But it happened. And it took culture of being positive. And I had 3 goals for myself. When I walked into attitude, and I was going to savor every moment, whether it was positive or negative. And it worked. It helped. So I know that kind of went off on a tangent, but those kids in your face, it reminded me of my kids that were literally yelling, screaming, spitting in my face. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too. And I think the best reaction is always through kindness and through connection, because that's how the students are often doing that, because they don't have that connection. So if you take the time to get to know them and to talk to them, and to, even if it's making little comments here and there, I think, becoming the teacher that is interested in them, then they're going to be better for you. And it is like, it's not a tangent to talk about classroom management when talking about this, because that's how we deal with this, is through classroom management. I think we're doing a lot of classroom management talk because that's how we can make it happen.
If all teachers took the first 3 weeks is all it takes to make a positive phone call, a positive email to every single child, just those first 3 weeks, then every time you have a conversation with that parent, you've already started off on a positive note. It takes sure they will support you. They will be behind you. They will remember you as the parent that, quite honestly, may have been the first parent ever in their child's career in education to have ever called with a positive comment. So I spend my first 3 weeks just making, in high school and middle school, making those positive connections. It helps.
Yeah, I think it does. The district that my kids go to, they do home visits. So the Monday or the Friday before school starts, all the teachers go and visit all the kids, and the art teachers don't do it. Well, actually, no, they do. The art teacher, it was the classroom teacher, and then it's one of the specials teachers, and there was 3 people that showed up for each girl. And it's just such a great, the kids get to see the teacher, they get to have a little conversation, and then, you've made this positive connection. And so that when you go into the classroom, you're set up for success. I love that. A lot of work though, calling all those parents, but especially when you have 100.
But when you think about how it saves you in the long run, when you've got an angry parent, they'll remember that you cared enough to call. It does help in the long run.
I guess I'm in a different situation where I've had the same kids for 3 years now. So I've had some of these kids since they were in kindergarten, and now some of my middle schoolers, I had them when they started off in 5th grade. So I have that relationship already built, 1 with the child and 2 with the parents, where the parents really know me. We're a very small school. I do the yearbook. I do a lot of balls and events for our school. So I'm not just the art teacher at our school. I have other events where I'm really kind of involved with the parents. And that has helped so much with what I do just day in and day out, because when I do have a problem with a kid, the parent has an understanding of how I'm like outside of the classroom as well. And they know, okay, she really cares about my kid. She knows me. She knows my family. That's made the biggest difference in the world. So when I do have an issue, a discipline problem in the classroom, I'm at the point where I can just email a parent and say, hey, okay, this is what happened today. And I don't have to deal with a lot of that back and forth of like, well, that's not what happened. And a lot of that is over now because I've had that relationship and the parent's like, oh, okay, Johnny did do that and I'm going to talk to him and I'm so sorry. So I am very thankful that I have the time kind of under my belt now where I know the children and I know the kids but I know their parents. And that has, for me, helped with my just overall stress level of teaching, because one of the biggest stressors is the parents in that relationship with the parents, and making sure that when there is a problem, you can resolve it amicably, and just building those relationships is key. I agree with what Monica is saying is be the person that sends the good behavior report. Don't always be the one that's saying, oh, well, Johnny played with scissors again today. Notice the little things, notice when Johnny, he actually picked up something off the floor and sent a nice note that day. It's like, oh, I'm so happy, he did this today and he helped this person. And when you notice the little things with some of the kids that you're having difficulty with, it just makes your life so much easier. And you build those relationships, and not only with the kid, but with the parent. And you just let them know, we're a team, we're on the same side. And for me, that's been the biggest thing that's just helped the most with what I do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially I think, tying it to, saving your sanity, which we were talking a little bit about earlier, is one, finding the right school and finding the right grade level that you are most comfortable with. So Monica found her little ones and now she's thriving there. And then also once you find that, to, stick with it so that year after year, you're developing the relationships and it's only going to get easier. So if you're in the situation where it's not the right fit, then find the right fit, but also know that it does get easier with those relationships. That's great.
I'm going to say this for people who suffer from anxiety. I know that change is hard. Leaving my school of 12 years to go to a school and start over and then have cutbacks and lose that job and then end up in an inner city school. And I loved it, but it was not. I was taking home their problems every day and I was living it, and it was affecting my health and my relationship with my husband. So now I'm at a new school starting over again. And with elementary, I'm in my zone. The parents are so supportive. My principal is so supportive. I'm very fortunate. I am so fortunate, but I'm starting over again. People don't know me. So I'm not eating in the lounge, and I'm not going to social events, and they're wondering why, and having to explain, why I don't socialize like other people. And I will say things that cut down on my stress level when I'm evaluated or open house night, I start with the lights off and a presentation and pictures of my kids because, it's dark, it's quiet. That's my way of getting in my zen, getting in my zone, getting prepared for, being all eyes on me. That has helped me. I do student-led conferences, so the students are in charge of their conferences. Also, art fairs have the students be in charge of it. Students are the ones that walk the parents around and show the work and talk about it. So the more I can have the kids be in charge, the less I feel eyes are on me, especially starting over because I've only been in this is my second year at my new school. So these are my coping mechanisms that you need to be able to not fear change, in the sense that it was hard for me to switch schools, and then be let go, then switch to another school. Then the school that let me go invites me back. I was hired as middle school, and the week before school starts, oh, by the way, you're teaching elementary. And talk about stress for somebody who's anxiety. But they must have done something I didn't, because I've never been happier. I'm in my zone. So don't be afraid of change. And change is hard for us. I know it is.
Yeah. One of the things too that you mentioned, I think that is a really profound thing for me and a really big struggle for me, not really profound, but a struggle, is not taking home the emotions of your students. I have pretty much only taught in inner city environments and low income schools, and I love those environments. I think they're great for me in many ways, but the struggles that the kids are going through, I have a really hard time not wearing that. Like if a kid is crying and telling me something that I'm not the rest of the day crying too, and that night crying and crying on the way home. So how do we deal with that?
We're so sensitive. I mean, you do take it home, and you do. I could have stayed there forever. I loved it there. Mm-hmm. It was so hard for me to leave them, but I left them for my health because the things my kids were going through, I mean, when I go in the next day and I'm like, oh, I had an argument with my husband on the way to school because we commute 2 hours together. And, last night my neighborhood was shot up. I mean, and it's like, that's all I can think about the rest of the day. I mean, this poor child. So I was spending my lunchtime. I was having kids come in during lunch and before and after school just to have a safe space, and being this person who is an introvert. And it was my time to decompress. It wasn't the right place for me. And for you to be able to be in your zone in an inner city school, I commend you because we need you. We need people like you. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm not there anymore, but I would be if I was. I would be if I was still teaching. But so, I think that I taught. My first teaching job was in a South Dallas school, elementary, and when I left, and I had to leave, like it was one of those, that same thing as like I left for my own sanity. I could not be there anymore. I would cry on the way there and I would cry on the way back. And it wasn't that I didn't, it was just it felt very, to me, hopeless. And I felt like I couldn't make any sort of difference, and that and I was pregnant. I just had a baby too. So that didn't help the whole situation either. But after I left, I think I had PTSD for years, and I would drive by that neighborhood and I would completely freeze up, and I could not even, like, if I needed gas in that neighborhood, like I would just rather run out of gas a little bit later than just stop and get gas. Cause I was so scared I was going to run into them, because then they were going to see that I failed them. There was just this whole, like, it's so hard.
It is.
Dealing with all of these, and I don't have an answer for that, because last year during my planning time, I would often just take walks with kids because they were dealing with a lot. And so if a kid came to me crying, I'd be like, well, let's just go take walks. So I would just take walks all the time with children. But it was like, that's hard on me because then I lose my free time. I don't know. Yes. I'm not a good model for this thing because I just, but
we had our situation last year. A student passed away last February at our school. And it was kind of situation where, as a teacher, you're falling apart, your students are falling apart. And it was such a touchy situation because you want to model healthy emotion, but you also want to be there for your kids without completely losing it. Finally, someone very wise just told me, they're like, you know what, you're human too. And it's okay to show your emotions. And sometimes, and I was just very honest with the kids. And I just said, you know what, I'm just sad today. And I just let me have the space to be sad. And when I was honest with them, because, kids react in different ways, especially when they're grieving, they get even more hyper, or, they're acting up more than usual. It's just not your typical environment to be in. I learned a lot through that period and from those couple of months, because it wasn't a sudden thing. It was something that took some time, and it was a period of grieving and period of having to, I don't want to say hide emotions, but deal with emotions, and also deal with an entire student body that was also going through the grieving process. And so when you're doing that, your reactions, I realized the best thing I could do was just slow down and just slow and just be quiet and calm and just listen when someone was saying something, just to really, truly listen to what they were saying. And then not necessarily even have an answer for them. Like, I'm just going to listen to you and see, they need to be heard. And I realized in that time that my role was to just let them be that place, let them be that quiet and just to kind of be a presence, but not have any answers. Just be quiet and just listen to them. So when they're upset, if something came out in their artwork, just allow the space, the breathing room. And I do that now where, even if we don't have such a huge trauma like that, I mean, thank goodness we haven't had anything that bad this year, but there's kids that have a lot of stuff going on. Middle school is crazy time for everybody, and we have a lot of big emotions, and everybody has something going on. But if I approach a child and they come upset, if I'm just, okay, talk to me, tell me about it, and I give them that space, I don't have to have the answers. That's not my job. But my job is just to be that quiet space for them. And I found that that's the best role for me, one, for my sanity, and two, for my personal peace, because then I can come home and then I know for myself that I need that space and I need that quiet. So I'm modeling truly what my personality is, but I'm also modeling what a child doesn't understand how to do yet. And so if I can do that at home and like, okay, when I get home, my kids know if I come directly to the bathtub, we're in trouble. Like, they're like, oh no, I've almost had a day. And they just know that if the door is closed and I come in and I close the door and I turn on the bath water, and they know that I need space. And so I think that's something that not only do we need a model, but in a way, you kind of have to teach that to kids. It's not necessarily something that is inherent to them. And they'll try to occupy their time with something else, just like an adult. When something goes wrong, you want to fix it. But sometimes you just have to teach that there's not a solution to every problem. There's not necessarily going to be the right words. Sometimes you just have to give that breathing room. And so for me, I've been trying to give that breathing room with my students. And then also the hardest part is when I come home, I'm going, oh, you know what? I need some breathing room and allowing my own space to stay healthy and not go crazy. And just you lose your mind, you lose your soul if you don't.
Yeah, that's so powerful, because I think we feel like we always have to have the answer and we have to fix it, but we can't. And that's not the world we live in. And so I think that's really powerful that you're teaching that to your students by modeling that and, showing them that, emotion is okay and it's okay to feel sad, and that, even adults feel sad and even adults feel anxious and even adults feel, because I had a student last year who would have panic attacks all the time and would come to me and the music teacher, kind of we were next door to each other. And, we would just sit with her, because we can't fix it. We can't make the panic attack go away. And we would just sit with her and she would breathe and we would, I would tell stories. I would Monica, I would tell stories of my childhood and be like, oh, and just be with her in that situation. And I think that's the best we can.
I'm going to jump in and agree with you guys. We can't fix everything, but coming from my experience, and this is personally my biggest accomplishment, my inner city school had no anti-bullying program whatsoever. And my first month there, 2 children were beaten to the point where they had concussions. And I go to my principal and I say, we don't have anything in place, no anti-bullying program, nothing. And she said, well, no one will step up. And me not wanting to have any eyes on me, not, want to blend in the background, I stepped up. And so I was trained in, it's called alleviate, but I also went to Kagan's win-win discipline twice. Cooperative learning, BIS strategies, everything. And basically, I had the kids take a survey. Where are your hot spots? And they said before school, after school, during lunch, in the restrooms, transition time. So we actually walked our classes in silence from class to class. We quadrupled supervision in the mornings at lunchtime. Everybody had to be there after school. It really changed the culture of our class. We had advisory on Fridays. So the first half hour of every Friday was just team building, where we had to play games and learn to get along with people you wouldn't normally talk to, or just talk about what's bothering you. We'd circle up and get in a circle, what happened over the weekend. And the stories these kids shared are heartbreaking, but they needed somebody to listen, and these kids understood each other. And so I normally would say, this is somebody else's problem, but I couldn't stand back anymore. And I had to fix something because people were getting hurt. And by the time I left, major referrals were down 80%. So we were doing something right. And I, to this day, miss that school. I love that school. I feel like I made a difference. And then I went and up and left them. But my kids, we still keep in touch. They have my email. They let me know how they're doing. But you're right, we can't fix everything. But if we're in a situation where we know something must be changed, we need to not be afraid to change it. So the very first time I had to present all this, so not only do I have to tell these teachers that they have to do more work, but I have to be the one to tell them that. And I was given permission to be the one to call the parents and say what the punishment would be and to meet with the parents. And so all the things that I don't want to do, I just volunteered for. So the very first time I met with these teachers, afterwards, one came up to me and said, are you okay? Are you going to pass out? And I go, you are so red. And I go, no, but I did it. And they looked at me like, what do you mean? But I was just so proud of myself that I was able to get up in front of everybody and say, hey, this is what's best for the kids. This is what we're going to do. We're all in it together. And I, of all people, was the one, and they didn't realize until they got to know me better what a big moment that was for me. I mean, yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And one thing I think that I'm noticing as we're talking is that a lot of this is about really being aware. So it's noticing little things that if you give yourself the space to pay attention to how you're feeling and pay attention to how your students are feeling and pay attention to your surroundings. And we're kind of oversensitive to our surroundings as is. So we notice those things, but I think that is a way to deal with this. And one of the things you said, and it wasn't even really related to this whole idea of, teaching with anxiety, but you said, what are your hot spots? And that kind of stood out to me. And I was like thinking through your day as a teacher, what are your hot spots? What are the times where you're feeling like you're going to lose it? What are the times where you're feeling where your skin's crawling or your face is getting red, and like finding solutions for those little things. So it's like, even like keeping a journal, like, okay, this a lot. I really got upset when 7th grade was there today, and this is what they did. And you start to notice, okay, well, it was because of this noise they did or whatever, and then you start to fix those little things. I think that's a good lesson, even though it wasn't really religious bullying. Well, I think the bullying is amazing, but I'm like, oh, what are your hot spots? I'm like, I love that.
I have a really big hot spot, and I've actually trained my first period class to recognize it. One is I'm not a morning person. Like, I'm just not a morning person. And we have morning meetings every day at 7 a.m. And I usually have about 5 minutes before my first class starts. I have 6th graders lined up outside my room at 7:30 in the morning. And so I come downstairs from the meeting and I walk into my room and I immediately have to start teaching. I don't have time to check my email. I don't have time to drink my coffee. I don't have time to do anything for myself or anything, just teacher related before I have to instantly start my day. So I still have my bags, on me as I'm walking down from our meeting. And I've kind of taught the kids in a way to just give me a little bit of space. So if Miss Jordan still has her coffee is still at the top of her mug, just give me just a little bit of minute to just drink a couple sips and think over my day and kind of calm down before I start into a lesson, because they understand that they're kind of a little stressful first thing in the morning. They're very hyper. I am not. I've got 36 graders that are already bouncing off the walls. They're being very loud. They're throwing their books down. And so they've kind of learned to, as they come into my classroom, okay, we're not going to slam our books down on the table. We're just going to kind of gingerly walk in, put our things down. And I've gotten one kid that they're so trained. They're like, have you had your coffee yet today, Miss Jordan? And I'm like, nope, still working on it. Give me 5 more minutes. And they're like, okay, just let us know when you're ready. And we're like, okay, we're almost there. It's to that point where just kind of little cues of letting them know, like, you know what, you've just got a lot more energy than I do. I'm not a morning person. And it is kind of a trigger. If I had to start my day with just chaos and noise and they're throwing their books down, they're screaming across the room at each other, it sets me off on the wrong tone. And I just don't like to start my day that way. So I've been trying really hard to help them understand, okay, you're coming into a new environment. You need to respect, 1, my classroom, and 2, my space. If we're going to come in quietly in the morning and we're not going to be this crazy loud that they are rambunctious. And it's taken some time, but now we're in May and they've kind of getting it. I actually have one kid, they bring me I get text messages from them, you need a coffee this morning? I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. So it's like, we have an Edson's around the corner and they're like, Miss Jordan, we have coffee for you. I'm like, yes, you are trained well, my child. You're doing great. And so it's just the little things like that. But I am aware of my hot spots. The other is lunch. If I start to get hungry, the 2nd graders kind of get on my nerves a little bit. And I'm realizing there are different spots in the day when I definitely have more energy. Study hall, the end of the day is not very good because I'm exhausted. They're tired. They're tired of listening. So it's kind of just controlled chaos at this point, but we'll see.
Yeah. One of my hot spots was after school. So I couldn't do art clubs because by the end of the day, I could not muster any more interactions with any more people. And so even the music teacher was like, she's the complete opposite of me. It's awesome. I'm going to have her on the podcast. We just haven't scheduled it yet. So I can't wait for y'all to hear me talk with her. But she's always has everybody always around her and it's next door. So they're always like, oh, let's go into Mrs. Ingram's room. And I'm like, no, let's all go back back to the music room because we can't handle this right now. Or I'd just leave and go somewhere else because I can't. I noticed, I felt guilty because I'm not doing the after school programs and they wanted it. They wanted an art club so bad, but I had to say no because I'm like, I just can't physically handle that addition of more. And it's not the teaching, it's just
noise.
the noise and people.
And I can't do it. I'm like, I gotta go. See you later. Bye. Good luck. Like, I'm out of here.
Music teacher would send her kids in like to practice. Like she would run like 600 clubs and she would have one club going in one room. And then she'd be like, okay, you guys go practice your ukuleles in the art room. And I was like, oh, let's not do that. So I would be like, okay, I'm going to leave early today. I'll see you later. I'm going to go work from Starbucks the rest of the day because I can't.
Yeah. I like everything structured. A couple of my hot spots I've noticed, now that I'm at elementary, I have classes that'll show up 6-7 minutes early. They'll come right after morning announcements. I lock my door. I need that time. I'm not going to start early just because you arrive early. And then I have teachers that can be 7 to 8 minutes late. So I have 2 classes. So I'll have 63 kids in my room. And for me, that's just uncontrolled chaos. So my class that's lined up knows to sit down, zip up. Not a sound. My class entry knows to come in, not to say a sound. They don't talk until that class leaves because I cannot handle all of that noise. And if they do it quietly, I'll tell a story. And they want that story. So that's the only way I can handle it. And I wish you don't get that in middle school. You don't have to deal with those kind of issues. And now that I'm back at elementary, I have forgotten, that's gonna happen. The other one is lunchtime. I used to work through my lunchtime, and I have learned I have to take that time for myself. It decreases my anxiety for the afternoon. I get a little bit stressed that I don't have everything set out and ready, but if I don't decompress, I notice my anxiety rising. So I don't eat in the lounge with other people. I am now eating lunch in my room, which I used to for the first 20 years of my life. I did not eat lunch. I skipped it. I worked right through lunch. So I'm learning to take better care of myself.
It was funny. Y'all are listening to this and not watching, but right when she said she worked through her lunch, both me and Amber were shaking our head no at the same time. We're like, nope, don't do that. And I used to do that too. I'm a workaholic. I just want to work, but you really have to learn to put yourself above that and try to give yourself that space. And I think it really does boil down to setting boundaries, like setting boundaries with the students, setting boundaries with the other people on your campus, that you need to learn where your boundaries are and then make sure that those are clear, that the other teachers know they cannot send a whole classroom full of kids into your room 7 minutes early. That is not okay to do, especially when they'll just send them in and you're like, why are you just sending them in? No, they line up and you wait until class time starts. It reminded me of a story last year. My old school, we had a house system. Do you have a house system yours, Amber?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. So we had this house system and I love my house. Like I really connected with my house, but I wasn't the head of my house. So anyway, the head catch, now I can't even remember what he was asking me to do. We were having a meeting, me and the 2 heads of houses, about what we were going to do for our house, which is Thumos. And he wanted me to design something or create like a t-shirt or something. And I instantly started crying. I was like, oh God, this is bad. But I was at that moment in my life, I was like, no, you gotta add one more thing. And then I felt so bad. And I was like, I'm going to have to say no to this. So the art teacher's not going to design the t-shirt for Thumos. And I love Thumos. But I could not, he looked at me and he was like, it's okay. We'll do. But I also at the same time I did a course for my website at the same time last year. And I was doing that on the weekends and I was teaching full time and I have 2 small children. And so I just you asked me to do one extra thing and I just lost my mind. And people ask me how I do it all. And I'm like, I cry a lot.
I cry. Hey, Phil. Yeah. Well, yeah. Last year was yearbook and ESL and then the Revolutionary Ball. And so it's not just teaching art. And so finally this year I'm like, okay, well, I got rid of ESL, but somehow yearbook is still there. And we did Revolutionary Ball. Oh, let's add a Regency picnic on top of everything. And
go ahead.
It's just, somehow I haven't learned no. I need to learn the word no.
I am great at it. You have to, because my old school, I not only updated, but I designed all 3 elementary websites. I kept them updated weekly with my full-time job. Plus, I was in charge of every display, not just the art displays, and every event I had to decorate. And finally, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So what I've learned is if somebody asks me for something, I give them the tools, or I tell them, here, this is what we can do. I can tell you how to do it. You can Google it, or I can give you the tools to do it yourself, or I can start it, but you will finish it. And I've learned that if I say one of those things, it ends up, they go away. I don't have to do it. They find something else, or they find someone else who will do it for them. Because you can only do so much in your life, and teaching is a full-time job. It is. And we have families where we all have children. We have a life outside of school. And a web page designer, that was basically a part-time job on top of my teaching job. And I wasn't getting paid for it. So it's good to say no. It feels so liberating. But as an anxious person, you get so anxious about saying no.
Yeah, because anxiety is so rooted in what other people are thinking, and it's not what they're thinking, it's what you're thinking they're thinking. It's not actually what they're thinking. They're usually not. They're thinking of themselves. They're not thinking of you. But yeah, that you don't want to disappoint someone, and you don't want to have them think ill of you, and you don't want to be seen as not caring about the students, or not caring about the school, or not caring about Thumos, your house. You don't want to be seen that way. But so you can get bogged down in that. But if you just have to realize that they're not doing that. I mean, maybe they are, but they'll get over it like 5 seconds later.
Even if they are, I need to get outside my head, because I'm constantly staring at them, thinking all the different things they're thinking of me right now, when really, you know what? No is no, and move on.
Yeah, no, complete sentence. That's, you can just say no. And that's it. Yeah. Just need to learn how to do that more often. I'm pretty good at it now. I mean, I felt I held those boundaries pretty good last year, but not always in my life have I done that. But I also was running a business on the side that made it easier to say no. I'm like, sorry, I'm basically doing 2 jobs right now. Okay, so let's see. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, you mentioned that we all have children at home. So how do you deal with parenting and teaching at the same time?
My son is highly functioning autistic with severe anxiety. So I come home to tears every night for hours over homework. And the fear of bedtime. What if I don't get to sleep? What if I can't get to sleep? What if I can't wake up early enough, because we commute 2 hours. So we have to be up by 5 a.m. And it is tough. And sometimes I want to go in my room, shut the door and cry, but I know he needs to see that we can get through this. So we set timers, we do lists, we check mark everything off. Okay, dinner time. Now it's, 15 minutes of reading. Now it's homework time. Whatever we get done in this chunk, we get done. And if it doesn't get done, it does not get done. We're not going to stress over it. So I have a different probably home life than you guys in that sense, dealing with the anxiety that my child, who I sometimes feel like, did I give this to him? Did he inherit it from me? But we work with lists and we work with timers. And when he is very worried, we have a worry box. We write down the worry. We put it in the worry box. We give it 10 minutes and we worry about it for 10 minutes. And after that, we can't worry about it anymore. And I'm like, why didn't I do that for myself at night when I'm laying there at night and I'm thinking of all the things I haven't gotten done or done right, or because I'm a perfectionist and I'm learning to let that go. So now I'm like, I'm giving it 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, to heck with it. I got to get some sleep. So that's how I deal with a home life. Plus, I'm lucky that I have an hour in the car with my husband commuting, and he's also an art teacher. So he gets me more than anyone else possibly can, and he gets what my day is like. And sometimes we drive in silence because we've had those days, and other times we talk the whole time. But we shut everything off early in our house. 8 o'clock is, if things aren't done by 8, they're not getting done, and that's okay.
Yeah. You know what? I also have my daughter sounds a lot like your son. She has very extreme anxiety, and it was a really hard thing for me at first, because I always thought my anxiety came from things in my life, like the alcoholic father who abandoned me when I was a child, and, that sort of thing. You just think it's because of that. So I have this daughter who has this lovely home life with 2 stable parents who both work, and they're, we're all I was home for a long time with her. And then all of a sudden she has the same anxiety I have. She has the same sensory problems I have. Like, she doesn't like to be touched. She doesn't, she's me, but 8, and I was like, okay, so this is just a thing we have. And I gave it to her genetically because she's me, but like, it opened my eyes to anxiety in a whole different way, to see it just manifest in this little person who didn't have any of the same problems that I had. But also, yeah, we do the same thing. I'm going to use that worry box thing. I'm going to write that down so I forget it, because we need that. Right. But yeah, we do the list thing. And I also talk to her about my anxiety as well, because I think she likes to know that she's not alone, and that, if I'm feeling anxious, and I will tell her, I'm like, I'm feeling anxious about this right now. And I think she likes that. She likes to know that, like, she's not crazy, and sometimes she'll be like, can you tell me about something you're worried about? Like, just so that she knows that it's kind of normal to worry sometimes. So yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, and when you come home to someone who's having anxiety issues, you have to be with them, and you can't take that time for yourself sometimes. So it's very hard.
Yes.
Thing to do.
My poor 3 kids go to school with me. They're at my school.
Oh,
I'm also their teacher and teacher. So the poor little darlings get me all day long. But they put in the same hours I do. So if I'm staying there late, and of course I'm there at 7 a.m., they're there at 7 a.m. So we use our car time. It sounds like similar to Monica. When we're driving, we have 30 minutes, not 2 hours like you do, but we have 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes after school. That's kind of our decompression time. But for home life, I'm real kind of clear. We try to get all our homework done at school, just kind of the same mentality of you leave your work at work, we leave our school, at school. And so we try to do our homework there before we even leave. I don't like getting home and then having dinner and having to pull out more schoolwork. It's just not good for us. Like, when we're home, we want to just relax and decompress from the day. I don't want to have to talk about, their homework or what they have to do. We just try to leave it back in the school grounds, because we're there enough hours of the day to get it all covered. We're there a lot longer than the normal kids are. So we get it done at that time. But my kids are actually the polar opposites. My husband is an extreme introvert, and we have the 3 most extroverted children you have ever met. Our youngest, we call her the queen, because she's the queen. And then our oldest is in, drama club, and she's the most extroverted person. She can walk on stage and has no anxiety whatsoever. And the middle child is still, for a middle child, has no worries. He's just not wired that way. And we don't understand it, but we're learning from them how to function in the world. We're kind of teaching them to be kind to the softer people in the world, because they're the loud ones, and they're, they're full of confidence and the energy. And so at home, they've kind of learned to go to their zone, to give everybody kind of space, either the front porch or, their bedrooms. And we just kind of space out and give each other time to decompress, because our day is very intense, especially at our school. I think Cindy understands the curriculum that we have is just very rigorous. It's a long school day. And so by the time we get home, the last thing they want to do is talk about schoolwork or any of that. So we try to just make just a division line. And when we get home, we're like, oh, let's go for a walk. Let's go to the playground. But we're not talking about that history test coming up or that Latin homework. We try to just kind of save that for the car rides and save that for when we're in our school space.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in not taking work home. I mean, it's not always possible, but I work from home now, so that's a problem. But I really do feel like, just like what Monica said is, at 8:00, when it's not done, it's not done. Life will go on tomorrow if you're not 100% ready for it tomorrow. Things will work out, and your sanity is more important than doing that last thing, says the person who just spent 10 to 12 hours working on one project. But, it's not always a good in practice, but I do try my hardest, because
that brings me to a question I have, because first of all, I used to do overnighters. I was known at my school for doing overnighters. I could not go to bed until everything was done. That was my younger years. But I have noticed first thing I did when you contacted us was I sent out an email to all my staff at both my schools saying, hey, do any of you know anyone that suffers from, social anxiety or stress, or are any of you introverts? How do you deal with it? And first of all, that was so liberating because in that email, I explained why I don't eat in the lunchroom and the lounge and why I don't go to social gatherings. I was amazed at how many people that I didn't know very well that emailed me back, or from other schools that I don't even go to, because somebody said, hey, a friend of mine at your school sent this to me. I have crippling anxiety and this is how I deal with this. And or this person I didn't know very well said, hey, I really want to sit down and talk with you. And we ended up talking his whole plan time. But the one thing we all had in common, and I noticed, was that we all over plan. We all tend to, the way we deal with it is to plan to the extreme. Do you guys do that too? Is it just me?
I used to. I did. I used to. I had a planner for my planner. And, and I had a color coordinated planner. That is, I will say, that is the one thing my oldest has gotten from me. Her planner is color coordinated, and it's now she recycles it and it's full of artwork. It's gorgeous. Like I'm going to sell her planner. But I am an over planner. And one thing that actually my youngest child has taught me is that I can plan as much as I want, but my plan is going to change.
Yes.
And so I've really learned to just kind of go with the flow with her. And then of course, just with teaching in general has taught me so much. I mean, my schedule every day, last 3 weeks of testing, I have no idea what classes I'm getting, who's coming in the door, how many kids. And I'm just kind of going, oh, okay, well, throwing that lesson plan out the window. My first year completely stressed me out because I was like, I had a plan and this is the perfect lesson and we're going to do it no matter what. And this year I'm like, okay. There you are. You're coming today. Okay, let's, just the free paint or something. Like I learned to just let it go a little bit more because it's not worth it. It's not worth going back and being so stressed out about it and trying so hard to hold on to my ideal of what I think has to be done when not necessarily it has to be done at that level.
Yes. Okay. So
down here.
I think that anxiety is, and this is based off of what I've learned in years of therapy, but I think anxiety is rooted in one, perfectionism and expectation, and perfectionism and over planning. I think you're setting yourself up to fail. And I have always been, I would say, a perfectionist. And I still am a perfectionist, and I have to let it go. Like what some of the things my husband says is, he says, you're good enough is someone else's excellent. Like you're setting I set standards too high for myself. I set standards too high for the people around me. And that's just setting ourselves up to fail. And I think, I overplan when it comes to like, if I'm going to deliver a lesson that I've never done before, and I'm not 100% confident in the material, in the plan, in knowing like the timing and the pacing of the lesson is going to work out exactly like what I think in my head, I feel a lot of anxiety. And there's certain topics that I feel a lot of anxiety teaching. Like I get panic attacks when I have to teach Renaissance and ancient Egypt. And you notice in the resource library, my membership site, there was not a Renaissance lesson for like years because like, I noticed Amber's like, yeah, I know, I've been wanting one and you didn't post one.
It's okay. I love Renaissance.
Ancient Greece just now arrived. But
which is excellent. It's great.
But yeah, because I feel like if I don't, like those are two, like Renaissance and ancient Egypt are like big topics, and there's so much expectation of getting it right, and they're so interesting, and everyone loves ancient Egypt. So I'm like, I'm going to screw this up royally because you're expecting this amazing lesson from ancient Egypt, and I can't cover 3,000 years of ancient Egypt art history and be perfect at it. And so, I get build myself up in this panic, and it's so funny. And I did it with Australia Aboriginal art too, but I think I've finally gotten over that one. But yeah, it's just like I have to know the material, and I have to know it in my heart and my soul,
I broke my podium actually the other day because I had one book, on top of it. I had my backup book, which is like, about 5 inches thick of my original, huge art history book, just in case I like messed up a detail of one of them. And so I put the heavier book on top of the other 2 books I already had on my podium, and the whole thing fell to the ground. So it didn't matter. what I wanted, but that's kind of an example of my perfectionism at play. What I was so wanting to make sure I had it right that I kind of blew the whole thing up because I wanted to get it right. And it was my overthinking, my overplanning. And it kind of ended up being a disaster anyway, where I should have just made a 1-page copy and gone off of that instead of trying to make sure I had every detail correct. But that goes back to my anxiety. And I'm very fortunate. I have some very, very smart kids, and they catch on quick, and they ask me questions that on the spot, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's like, Augustus Suprema Porter. And they're like, well, what was the date of that battle, that naval victory battle with, And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm flipping through my book, the Battle of Actium, 31 BCE. And like one kid kind of looks at me and they're like, it was not no. And like, I'm like, we'll fix it tomorrow. But that goes back to just my anxiety of wanting to make sure I have all the answers and be completely prepared. Where, even if I try my best to be completely prepared, I'm just going to break my podium. So now I'm learning to just, let it go a little bit, put the big 5-inch book on the table, and then, roll off of the one worksheet, and we'll go from there. It's a process.
Learning. My husband and I spend the weekends doing my online plan book to make sure it's always 2 weeks in advance, and it has the I can statements and my state goals and all these things. And he's we'll be driving and he'll be like, so what are you doing with 4th grade today? And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Oh, well, I don't really know yet. That to me would just get me shaking, not knowing. And I'm getting better at it. Like every day on the way home, I couldn't talk to him until I had updated my art-based page with everything we had done that day. And I have set my phone down. It's like, no, this is my time with my husband. I'm getting better at it, but I do overplan. And when I was in my evaluation with my principal, he just looked at me and he's like, I don't know what to say to you. And I'm like, oh no, what did I do wrong? And he's like, you wrote so many things that you should have done differently under what he's like, things I never would have thought of, and things. He goes, what goes through your mind? And I said, well, I have the reflection journal and I reflect every night. And he goes, how thick is that journal? And I said, well, I'm getting better at it, because when I looked through it, I was only seeing the negatives and I was forgetting all the wonderful things that had happened that day. And I said, so when I said that I was going to be present and choose my attitude and slow down and enjoy the moments, one of the things I've learned is when I start my reflection at night, the first 5 things that went awesome that day. And then I can write about things I want to do differently and improve upon. But I was so scared. I had no idea the look on his face. And he's just like, we're just going to skip this because I have nothing to say. You've said more than I ever would have. He goes, I didn't see anything wrong with it. And you just kept going.
I have done that. I've had bosses that said, you're writing yourself and your pay is based on this. They're like, you're doing a great job. Why are you so hard on yourself? I'm like, that's my natural state is to be hard on myself. What are you talking about?
We're very hard on ourselves, and we need to learn to not do that. We really do, because we're doing our best, and that's all anybody can do. Yeah,
for sure. This is going to be a longer episode. There was one thing I wanted to point out. I had another podcast interview, and it was with, her name was Lana Yelenev, and you might have already listened to it. Y'all have not, because the podcast hasn't launched yet. But one of the things that she said that I thought was great, and she's not an art teacher, but she said to check in. She did check-in times with herself and her family, every day. And I think everything that we're talking about, can boil down to that. Are you checking in with yourself? Are you, maybe every hour, every day, just stop and go, okay, how am I doing? What can I do better? Or not what can I, don't criticize yourself, but what can I do to make myself feel the way I should feel? How can I reduce my stress level? How can I be more present and mindful? And I think being present and mindful is such an important thing. And that's what Monica was just saying with her reflection, but also just being okay, being in the moment and not criticizing yourself and all of the things. I think is just I'm not saying this very eloquently, but
you're right on though.
So I think that people who are like us probably are listening to this going, yeah. And hopefully the people who are not like us are listening too. They kept listening and they're understanding their children and their students and their coworkers who are like us. So I'll put that in the intro too. Be like, if you're not like this, just listen so you understand what it's like. Okay. Well, I think it was super fun to talk with people who are similar neuroses. And
Sorry.
it's not, well, being an introvert's not a neuroses. It's just, maybe I don't know the definition of that word, actually, now that I think about it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And we will put links in the show notes to things we talked about. I know that Monica especially mentioned some different strategies and stuff that she's used. And then I'll link those.
I'm going to send you some information because I had a bunch of colleagues give me things that work for them that may work for somebody that doesn't work for me. So I'll send those.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I always end the podcast with the same question. And that question is, which artwork changed your life? Who wants to start?
Okay, I'm going to start just because you said that the Renaissance makes you really nervous. And it's actually my favorite.
Oh, awesome.
So that's my cup of tea, but I love Botticelli. La Primavera is my favorite just because of all the mystery behind it. I love how it keeps going and there's more and more and more in the Greek myths behind it. There's so many stories. And Monica kept saying she loves telling stories. I'm the same way. I love to just tell stories. And so for me, that piece of work just lends itself to so many great tales and epic adventures and these Greek, goddesses and myths. And it's just, it wraps it all up. And then the lore, you can go into the history. And I don't know, for me, I love the Renaissance. So I'm the opposite, but that's my favorite. And so that's my one.
I certainly like the art of the Renaissance. I just freak out when I have to teach it. Probably because I like it so much.
What about Leonardo da Vinci?
I don't like Leonardo da Vinci all that much, actually.
Oh, come on.
I'm a Michelangelo fan.
Before we answer, because of the audio issues, before I answer, I'm going to tell you, I lived in Italy. I studied in Italy. And I flunked Italian because I refused to get up in front of everybody and speak it. I couldn't do it. But you would think one of my favorites would be an Italian, especially being over there and studying all of it. But actually, I'm wearing a Van Gogh Starry Night shirt right now. His Starry Night, the background, that's how my head and my stomach feels when I am stressed out. And I relate that to my kids when I talk about Vincent van Gogh and how I feel like he and I would be friends. I really do. I think he went through a lot of the things that we did or that we're going through now and that introverts go through. And Starry Night, by far, when I went over, I spent last summer in Europe. I saw 6 different countries, but the highlight was going to Amsterdam to the Van Gogh Museum. And I paid extra to be the first one in the door and to be surrounded by everything all by myself. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. I will never forget it. So
I'm going there in 3 weeks.
Oh, have fun.
I want to go.
Pay extra so you can be in there first.
Okay. No,
it's worth it.
Okay. I have also used Starry Night to describe my anxiety as well. I feel like looking at that is how chest feels. I carry all my stress in my chest and my muscles in my chest. And I see that painting and I just I feel it. So I love that. Yeah, definitely. Well, I've already told my story on the past, but my story is about Picasso's Girl Before a Mirror. But I think it really does fit with this too, because she's looking in a mirror and what she is seeing is different and green and the colors are different and the kind of what's going on inside of us is different than what we're projecting to the world. And I think it's probably why that's my story because yeah.
If I want people to walk away with one thing from this podcast, don't be afraid to open up and tell people that you do suffer from this. It shouldn't be, people don't talk about mental health. They don't talk about what they're going through. And our kids are going through this. And if we can talk about how we can help our kids, why can't we talk about how we can help each other? And don't be afraid to, it was a burden off my shoulders to let everybody I work with know that I suffer social anxiety. It was liberating and it never would have happened if you hadn't reached out. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I hope that's just such a wonderful way to end. So I would love for people listening to reach out to us and let us know your struggles and, tag Art Class Curator on Facebook or something. Do y'all have a Twitter or something or Instagram or anything?
I have a Facebook page, Mrs. Wright's Art Room.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You mentioned updating your Facebook page. Okay.
Yes.
So awesome. Well, tag us on there and tell us your stories because we want to hear it. And thank you guys so much for opening up. And I know that there are a lot of us out there that benefit from hearing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's keeping you from showing more artwork to your students? Do you get stuck trying to choose a work of art, or do you fear your students will ask a question that you don't know the answer to? Have you tried to start a classroom art discussion but didn't know what to say or how to get your students talking? Are you worried you're going to spend a ton of time researching and planning a lesson that none of your students are interested in? That's why we created Beyond the Surface, a free professional development email series all about how to teach works of art through memorable activities and thoughtful classroom discussions. With Beyond the Surface, you'll discover how to choose artworks your students will connect with and learn exactly what to say and do to spark engagement and create a lasting impact. Plus, you'll get everything you need to curate these powerful learning experiences without spending all of your time planning. Sign up to receive this free professional development email course at artclasscurator.com/surface. Thank you so much for listening to the Art Class Curator podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and give us an honest rating on iTunes to help other teachers find us and hear these amazing art conversations and art teacher insights. Be sure to tune in next week for more art inspiration and curated conversations.